AI, it seems like it's everywhere these days, right? But is it the key to unlocking some amazing future we can only dream of? Or is it, paving the way for like a real life sci-fi nightmare?
It's a question everyone's asking, and honestly, it's a question with no easy answers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why today we're taking a deep dive into one really interesting discussion about it all.
Oh, this should be good. Where are we headed for this deep dive?
Well, our source material is a debate from a South Korean YouTube channel called Taepyeongyan Immundan.
Okay, Korean YouTube, cool. So I guess we'll be hearing what folks on the other side of the world think about AI.
Right. And the cool thing is they have three hosts, each with totally different views on AI.
Oh, so we'll get a nice range of perspectives then.
Exactly. And don't worry, you don't have to suddenly learn Korean. We've boiled it down to the key points.
Awesome, I'm all ears.
Trust me, this is a discussion you won't want to miss. And one thing that really stuck out to me was how this debate reflects what's happening globally.
I see what you mean. AI isn't just some far-off concept anymore. It's here, it's now. And people are definitely grappling with what that means for, well, for everything, really.
Totally. And you know what's really interesting? One of the hosts, we can call them the apprehensive host, actually avoids sharing any negative predictions about AI.
Really? That's kind of surprising, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about technology that could radically change our lives. You'd think everyone would have some concerns.
Oh, they definitely have concerns, but they're actually worried that if they say their fears out loud, those predictions might actually come true. It's almost superstitious, right?
It really is. It speaks volumes about how powerful and unknown AI still feels to a lot of people. Like, it's this force we don't fully understand, and maybe we're a little scared to poke it too much.
For sure. Okay, so to understand where each host is coming from, let's talk about their own experiences with AI. Like, one host, the early adopter host, they're completely on board with AI, using ChatGPT for absolutely everything.
So they're like the ultimate AI power user.
Oh, absolutely. Finding the best Korean soul food restaurant, ChatGPT. Researching the latest on climate change, ChatGPT again.
Wow. It's like they've discovered this incredible tool they can't live without.
Right, like they finally have that supercomputer they dreamed of as a kid, the one that can answer any question and solve any problem.
I get that. It's like that moment when you find an app that just simplifies your life. You suddenly can't imagine going back to the old way of doing things.
Exactly. But then you have the apprehensive host who's intentionally avoiding ChatGPT altogether.
So you got one host embracing AI with open arms and another one deliberately keeping their distance. That contrast is fascinating.
Right. And it makes their worries about AI even more intriguing, don't you think?
Totally. I mean, it makes you wonder, will people who avoid AI end up being left behind, like we've seen with older generations and some technologies? Remember all the struggles some folks had figuring out self-service kiosks?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's definitely something to think about. And it kind of leads into their discussion about what AI will be used for in the future. This is where things get really, really interesting. The apprehensive host actually sees a ton of potential for AI in healthcare, especially in those areas that depend heavily on data analysis and statistics.
That makes sense. AI is really good at crunching numbers and spotting patterns that humans might miss. So healthcare seems like a natural fit.
Yeah, and they even describe this idea of an AI pharmacy, which sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Imagine a system that can diagnose what's wrong with you and give you the right medicine based on your symptoms and medical history, all without a human doctor.
Wow, an AI doctor. That's pretty mind-blowing. I mean, would you trust an AI with your health?
That's a really good question. What do you think? What are the pros and cons you see with something like that?
It really does make you think, doesn't it? Like, where do we draw the line? And speaking of lines, the host also explored another interesting one, the potential for AI to boost human creativity.
Yeah. You might think that'd come from the early adopter, but it was actually the cautious optimist who was really excited about this.
Interesting. So they weren't worried about robots replacing artists and musicians and writers.
Not at all. They actually saw AI as a tool to unlock even more creativity. Imagine algorithms that can spark new ideas or help you get past a creative block, or even explore completely new ways of making art.
Wow. That's a cool way to look at it. Not replacing human creativity, but supercharging it.
Yeah, like having a brainstorming partner who can bring totally fresh perspectives to the table.
I like that. So it's not all doom and gloom with AI then. There's room for some really positive, human-centered applications.
Right. But let's be real, there are definitely some potential downsides too. And the Taepyeon Immundan hosts weren't afraid to talk about those. One of their biggest concerns was the economic impact, especially jobs.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, we've seen how new technologies can disrupt entire industries, and AI seems like it could be even more, well, disruptive.
Absolutely. The apprehensive host was particularly worried about this. They kind of painted this picture of a future where robots are doing most of the jobs, leaving millions of people unemployed.
It does sound pretty dystopian when you put it like that. I mean, history's shown that technological advancements often lead to some people losing their jobs, so AI is probably no different, right?
Right. But the cautious optimists offered a slightly more balanced view, I guess you could say. They pointed out that new tech also tends to create new jobs that we can't even imagine right now.
That's true. I mean, think about all the jobs that didn't even exist just a few years ago. App developers, social media managers, drone pilots. Who knows what kind of jobs AI will bring?
Yeah, exactly. The big question is, how do we adapt? How do we make sure people are prepared for these future jobs?
Right. Retraining and education are going to be more important than ever.
Totally. The hosts also discussed the idea of a universal basic income, UBI, as a way to address the potential job losses from AI.
Ah, UBI, that's a big one. It's the idea of just giving everyone a guaranteed income no matter what, right?
Exactly. It's definitely a controversial topic, with some people arguing that it would, provide a safety net if robots take our jobs.
And others saying it would be way too expensive or discourage people from working.
For sure, it's a complex issue with no easy answers. Oh, and the early adopter host brought up another potential issue, the possibility of AI being used for, bad stuff. They were particularly concerned about these things called deepfakes.
Deepfakes, these are the AI-generated videos that can make anyone look like they're saying or doing anything, right?
Exactly. They can be so realistic that it's almost impossible to tell they're fake.
That's scary. I mean, imagine the potential for spreading misinformation or ruining someone's reputation.
Yeah, it's a huge concern. It's how can we even trust what we see and hear anymore?
It really highlights the need for, ethical guidelines and regulations around AI, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We can't just let AI develop without any guardrails.
Right. The hosts talked about that, too. Regulation and ethical guidelines were a big part of their discussion.
Yeah, the apprehensive host was really pushing for strong regulations. They even suggested, a global pause on certain types of AI research, especially stuff related to autonomous weapon systems.
Whoa, a global pause. That's pretty drastic.
I know, right? But it shows how seriously some people are taking these potential risks.
I get it. It's better to be cautious than, end up in a Terminator movie situation.
Exactly. Even the early adopter host, who's generally pretty positive about AI, agreed that we need safeguards in place.
So they weren't just blindly optimistic.
Oh, no, not at all. They stressed the need for transparency and accountability in AI development. We need to understand how these systems work, who's responsible for them, and how they're being used.
That makes sense. We can't just treat AI as this mysterious black box.
Right, and this is a really complex issue, but the Tempingyao Imandan hosts offered some interesting ideas about how to approach it. They talked about the importance of education, open discussions, and collaboration between governments, industry leaders, and researchers.
So basically working together to make sure AI is developed and used in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between harnessing the power of AI and making sure it doesn't get out of control.
It's a delicate balancing act, for sure.
Wow, so much to think about, right? As we've been listening to all these different takes on AI, it's clear there's this huge mix of possibilities and also some pretty serious risks, too. It kind of feels like we're, on the verge of exploring this totally new frontier, and we're not quite sure what we'll find.
Yeah, I get that feeling, too. There's definitely a lot of excitement around AI, but also a healthy dose of, I don't know, maybe apprehension. We know it has the potential to change everything, but we're not sure if it'll be for better or worse.
And it's not like there's one Arctic answer, one clear path forward. The Tikpingyang and Mindan hosts really showed that even though they disagreed on some things, they all made some really good points.
Yeah, for sure. There's no easy solution here. It's going to take a lot of open discussion, careful planning, and I think a willingness to adapt as AI keeps developing, because it's definitely not slowing down.
One thing that really hit home for me in this discussion is that it's not enough to just be aware of AI. We need to actually be involved in shaping how it's developed and used.
Absolutely. It's not just about reacting to the latest AI news or trends. We need to be thinking critically about the kind of future we want and how AI fits into that.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into AI, I have one last question for you and for everyone listening. If you could design the future of AI, what would it look like?
Ooh, that's a good one. What would your ideal AI future be like?
For me, I'd want to see AI tackling some of the world's biggest problems, like climate change, poverty, and disease.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. AI could help us make real progress on those issues.
Totally, but we'd also need to make sure it's used ethically and responsibly, How do we prevent it from being used to harm people or make existing inequalities worse?
Those are the tough questions, for sure. And there are no simple answers. But that's why it's so important to have these conversations.
Absolutely. The future of AI isn't something that's just happening to us. It's something we're all creating together. So let's make sure we're creating the best possible future with it.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. It's been great exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI. We hope you found it thought-provoking and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Keep those conversations going, and let's all work together to build an AI-powered future that benefits everyone.